If you have been checking the headlines recently, you have seen that California dairy farmers are having a hard time keeping in the green because it all has to do with a complicated set of pricing, as I understand it. And as you know, milk prices have shot up in some cases, and there's a lot behind all of it. And we're going to find out what that is exactly, because we have on the line with us right now Mike Marsh. He's with Western United Dairymen and can give us some insight into the situation that's facing California dairy farmers right now. Mike, welcome to Eat, Drink, Explore Radio.
Good morning.
Nice to have you here. And every time I flip through my Google News feed, I always seem to see one article that talks about this problem that's facing the dairy farmers here, and it's the consumers too, because they're they're facing milk prices that are changing. What is it? What's the number one thing? Is it the feed costs because of the drought?
It is indeed the feed costs, and actually, the issue with feed costs for the farmers is twofold. One is U.S. ethanol policy, which today diverts over half of the corn crop produced in the United States into ethanol production for blending into gasoline. And then, secondly, the double whammy was, of course, the drought that followed on the tails of the ethanol policy. So, unfortunately, there's far less commodity available for the farmers to feed their cows.
Now, as I understand it, in a typical business model, if the feed costs are going up, then like for instance in a restaurant, if the cost of lettuce goes up, then they charge more for their salads. Like it just goes that way.
But charging more for milk is different, right?
Yes, it is. The prices for milk, not just in California, but around the rest of the United States, are essentially established by formula by government agencies. In California, our prices are set, our minimum prices are set by the California Department of Food and Agriculture. So the farmer can't necessarily pass along the additional cost that what it's taking him to produce the milk along to the consumer. Instead, the farmer has to wait until prices rise in order to recapture some of that revenue back from the consumer side. But unfortunately for the dairy farmers, there really is no means to transfer that additional cost that he's experiencing directly onto consumers.
So what situation are we in right now? Is there a push in Sacramento to get the pricing model changed to help these struggling farmers right now?
Well, our association has petitioned the California Department of Food and Agriculture 3 times in the past a year and a half, trying to increase the prices paid to dairy farmers in the state of California. We did receive a modest increase this past spring as a result of one of the hearings that we'd asked for, but unfortunately it simply was not enough, because the feed costs have simply skyrocketed upwards far faster than milk price recovery has come.
I was looking at an article on this saying that some farmers, that little small increase amounted to like $500 more a month for them. That really just didn't make a dent in their issues. And this article also says 300 dairies so far have shut down as a result of this.
300 California dairies?
That's what it says here.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm very skeptical at the 300 number. It appears to me that I'm not going to be surprised if we lose 100 of the farms in the state this year. We started.
So you think 300 is a little high?
I believe so. I've not seen any data to suggest that it's that extraordinary. But given that, we're going to lose about 7 to 8% of our farms this year in the state of California. And that comes after the horrific losses we had in 2008, 2009, 2010. The farmers simply have not had any respite since this ethanol policy in the U.S. has demanded more and more of the crop of corn to go into ethanol production. And farmers in the Midwest, in order to take advantage of that higher corn price, have stopped producing as much soybeans. So at the same time that the corn price has gone up, so has the soybean cost. And now that they've taken that land out of production also to plant more corn, then the alfalfa price has gone up as well. So the farmers just haven't had any respite from the Great Recession of 2008 to 2010.
There are some grass-fed only milks on the market now. Those are not as affected as those that are fed the corn because of the situation, or not?
No, those will be affected as well, because the dairy farmer will also augment, if he's an organic producer, for instance, and he's primarily a pasture-based operation, he will supplement his ration with his livestock, with his cattle, with corn or soybean meal. As long as it's certified organic product, he can provide that to his animals. And he'll do that in order to actually enhance the production of the milk that he's producing, but also it helps take better care of the cow.
Now, is the solution here as simple as raising milk prices and passing it on to the consumer, or does something need to be done about the ethanol? Is it does it require a more complex solution to make this work for California dairies?
Well, I think you raise a really good point. It is more of a complex solution that we're looking at, because it does have a number of different factors. Ethanol policy in the United States, fortunately, some of the tax credits that were going to the major oil companies like ExxonMobil, BP, et cetera, expired as of December 31st, due in large extent to efforts by Senator Feinstein. And at the same time, the tariff on imported ethanol was allowed to expire. But unfortunately, the thing that's really still catching us up on this ethanol issue is the mandate for using so much ethanol into gasoline. And historically, what has occurred is that the next generation of biofuels, or next generation of ethanol, perhaps coming from waste products, waste wood products, and that type of thing, has been chilled because of the subsidies that have been in place for a number of years.
Right.
Now, we got to transition away from that to get to a situation where if we're going to have oxygenated fuels, let's figure out a way to use materials that aren't food and stop putting food into our fuel.
Who is it that thinks that the ethanol is a good idea? Because a lot of environmentalists certainly don't. And where's that coming from? Where's the big push coming from?
Well, it's pretty good politics if you're a corn farmer in the Midwest.
Right. Right.
And so, of course, the government, having established those mandates, they're the ones that can turn them back. Now, there has been a petition filed with U.S. EPA Administrator Lisa Jackson in light of the drought and the consequences of the drought to temporarily waive the ethanol mandate. But, of course, she's getting a pretty good pushback from the folks who run the ethanol plants in the Midwest and also those that are out here in California, the Renewable Fuels Association. Now, the ethanol is one part of it for the farmers. They do need additional revenues as well, and we're going to see milk prices go up because the market's starting to anticipate that it's going to become more scarce as more farmers, not just in California, simply can't afford to produce milk anymore, and they will be going out of business. We're seeing a contraction in the nation's dairy herd as these very high feed costs are pushing farmers out of business, and the farmers, just in order to be able to buy the next load of grain to come into the farm, are in many cases having to sell off some of their cows into the beef market in order to compensate for the feed they have coming into the farm. So it's a really a very serious cycle that we're in right now.
So, Mike, to clarify, earlier I was reading on Google here while you were talking that 100 dairy farms, as you say, projected to close. 300 cattle farms projected to close as a result of the same thing that dairy farmers are going through in California. So that clarifies it a bit. But what you're talking about, it doesn't sound like there's a simple solution that's going to happen in time for these farms.
Unfortunately, for many of the farmers, it won't be in time. Our new Class 1 price for milk the processors use to put into the jug that you buy at the supermarket, those prices have really spiked for November. And but unfortunately, even though that price is moving up, you have to wonder, given the drought and the ethanol policy in the United States, whether or not even though your milk price may go up, are you going to have enough money to pay for your feed?
Is this uniquely California, or are other large dairy states like Wisconsin facing the same situation?
It's particularly acute in California because most of the feedstuffs we import from the Midwest. If you're a dairy farmer in Wisconsin, you're probably growing most of your own corn.
Right.
In California, if you're a dairy farmer, you might be growing almonds or wine grapes or walnuts or pistachios or some other type of permanent crop. So we don't really grow a lot of corn here in California because of the relatively higher valued crops we do produce.
Yeah, not feed corn anyway. We produce the corn that you buy at the grocery store.
Put on your table
for yourself, right?
Yes.
That's true.
So, as I understand it, California is the #1 dairy producing state. Are we in danger of losing that title because of this?
Well, not for a while, but at some point, if this trend continues, that could be the possibility. And that's been a real concern of mine, is that we're starting to see some of the infrastructure in the dairy side, the producer side of the dairy industry, starting to go away because as some of these dairies have closed. Instead of having a new owner with new cows coming into the facility, these dairy farms, the barns are being bulldozed, the corrals are being taken out, and permanent crops are going in, like almonds, walnuts, pistachios, and wine grapes. So.
Mike Marsh with Western United Dairymen, thank you so much for the update. This is something we'll be following, and as the situation changes, we'll have you back on.
You're welcome. I enjoy real California milk.